Podcaster's Guide to the Conspiracy, brought to you today by Josh Edison and Dr. M. Denton. Hello and welcome to the Podcaster's Guide to the Conspiracy. Well, interesting times, eh? Interesting times.
Yep, you certainly understand why that Chinese proverb means may you live in interesting times, which is to say, you don't really want to live in interesting times at all. It's a curse. It's not a blessing.
Yes, so I am Josh Edison, sitting here in Auckland, New Zealand. Now, we also, of course, have Dr. M. Denton, sitting in Auckland, New Zealand.
I am indeed.
But not anywhere near me, because we're in lockdown, baby.
Yep,
Auckland,
for the next 28 days, the entire country is in a process of self-isolation as we've moved to alert level 4, which means that all non-essential businesses are closed and people are sequestered to their own homes and only meant to leave about once a day for a period of exercise, and that's about it. Otherwise, we are living the indoor lifestyle 24/7, 28 days a month.
Yes, outside for a little bit of exercise or for doing something essential like shopping at the supermarket. And I understand our supermarkets, I haven't been yet, but I understand they've been transformed into quarantine zones with perspex screens up between you and the cashiers and limited people going in and all that sort of stuff. So
yes, I was in a supermarket on Wednesday, which was the last day before quarantine started. And yes, the plastic screens are now up, so you cannot breathe directly on your checkout operator. And it was, to quote Charlton Heston, a madhouse. It's a madhouse. Madhouse.
I hear, there's, as in the rest of the world, I assume there's been a fair bit of sort of panic buying happening here in New Zealand, despite the fact that the Prime Minister and the owners of all the supermarkets and everyone have been saying, it's fine, we're not running out of food, all the main stuff is made here in New Zealand, it's not going to go away. The only reason why there are shortages is because all of you assholes are going out and buying more than you need right now, completely needlessly. This problem only exists because you've made it exist. But that was actually the case. But I hear it's coming
what's
down.
Interesting is that people have been panic buying toilet paper, a commodity that we do produce en masse in this country. So there is no shortage of toilet paper.
Wood.
Yeah. Yes, we make a lot of toilet paper. There's no shortage of toilet paper in the production chain. There is not going to be a shortage of toilet paper in the production chain. The only thing which there is a shortage of is toilet paper on shelves because people have panicked and bought it, not thinking that other people might need to wipe their bottoms too.
Yes, in fact, you could say the only thing there is a shortage of is good old-fashioned common sense. Belly what.
Josh, are you about to write a right-wing opinion piece for the Herald now?
I think I have to, yes.
Sounds like you're getting pretty close to saying, look, if we just shoot the looters, everything's going to be fine.
I assume, yes. But yes, so that's life in New Zealand under COVID-19. 4 weeks of self-isolation, whether you like it or not. So how's the self-isolation treating you then?
Well, I was in Hamilton and now I'm in Auckland.
So that's an improvement already, yeah.
Well, I mean, we'll see what it's like in 28 days after living with my mother for a month.
Yes, well, there you go.
Already had slight issues today about things being thrown out from the fridge that did not need to be thrown out at all. But, early days, I'm sure some kind of accommodation will come. And there is a cat.
Yep, no, cats always help. How does it affect universities? University just shut completely, or are you doing online classes?
We're shut until Monday, at which point teaching resumes and we transition to online learning environments. Luckily for my large stage 1 course, that's already co-taught as an online paper. So basically all the infrastructure is already in place to transition to online. I just have to record lectures remotely rather than in front of students. For the graduate level course I'm teaching, we're going to do a kind of moderated forum thing where we pose questions and get students to write reflections upon those questions, whilst also looking at how they interact with one another. And I'll be doing some pre-recorded lecture stuff for that, just to introduce topics and give them the weight of my great wisdom. But no, at this stage, we're off this week. We'll have 2 weeks of teaching, and then we'll probably have a semester break, although it's not entirely clear whether we're moving the holidays around. So we basically have 2 weeks to go, what works and doesn't work? And then 2 weeks of panicking going, none of this works at all. We're all going to die as fiery morons.
Whereas the schools are moving their holidays forward 2 weeks, so they're technically speaking, school holidays start next Monday, and that's all there is to it. But that, again, since their kids are home for 4 weeks, it's not going to make a massive difference. But the boys have actually the teachers have been setting up Zoom meetings, so they've had sort of half-hour classes with as many of their classmates can get online, and they've spoken to their teachers and everything, so that's been quite nice. And that's, for me, it's almost business as usual for me, really. I mean, I'm lucky enough that I work for an IT company where people work from home all the time, so it just so happens that everyone's working from home now, but I'm pretty much just working as usual. I just need to take more breaks than usual to wrangle children from time to time.
I hope you're getting some exercise in as well, because otherwise it's going to be a very boring time inside. Yes,
I've done the occasional walk around the block. Yes, when sitting on my ass gets to be a little bit too sedentary.
Well, see, I took a walk this afternoon down to Milford Beach, where many, I had to assume, given the location and the age, affluent middle-class people were holding parties on the beach or outside their houses, drinking wine, not paying any attention to the quarantine whatsoever.
Oh, well. Supposedly the police are out encouraging people politely to get the hell indoors, so we'll see. Maybe they can do a drive-by.
These middle-class people on the North Shore will not like it if the police tell them to mend their ways.
Well, no, probably not.
The police probably should be doing exactly that to that particular class of person.
Yes, my parents have moved to the East Coast beach town of Omaha, where they have a place, and they've found that quite a few other people have had the same idea.
So you're saying that your parents have done the thing that you're not meant to do, which is move to a small rural community without much in the way of a health infrastructure system, and thus no real ICU beds, thus putting strain on the healthcare system that shouldn't be happening because people should be staying in their hometowns.
Well, to be fair, they do live up there a lot of the time now that they're retired. So, but yes, I don't quite know where the nearest hospital facilities are, but hopefully that won't be a consideration.
News just in, Josh's parents are evil.
Well, who can say? No, so anyway... So basically that's it. We're fine. I think I'm fine. You're fine?
Well, you know, apart from but otherwise, yes, everything's fine. Everything is fine.
We'll just see how this progresses, see whether or not we degenerate into insanity over the next 4 weeks of forced internment.
See, Josh, I'll stop you there. I don't have to degenerate into insanity. I've been insane for a long time. This is just going to be situation normal for people like me.
Oh, well, okay, then that's fine, I guess. So yes, everything's fine.
In fact, everything's better than fine. Everything's great.
I wouldn't go that far, but no. So I guess we can get into an actual episode then, which it being the last week of March, it's time for a news episode, and you can probably guess what the leading news article is going to be, or can you?
Yes, I was about to say, because we've got even more leading news. Let's start off with a sting.
Breaking conspiracy theories in the news.
Right, because yes, normally up until this afternoon, I was assuming we'd be leading with a bunch of COVID-19 stuff, but that's been put slightly back because the news came out this afternoon that the Christchurch mosque shooter has pled guilty to all charges against him.
And this is big news because this was completely unexpected. As far as we were aware, the terrorist in question was going to defend himself in court.
He pled not guilty previously.
Yeah, and try to explain why he had committed the murders, but how the murders were somehow a necessary corrective to what was going wrong in our society. And yet, apparently, as of a few days ago, told his counsel that he was going to plead guilty, which then led to the justice system going, but we're shutting down because of the virus, so we now need to organize an emergency session in front of a judge, which they couldn't tell anyone about, because even though the person in question had indicated, I will plead guilty to the charges. That only takes effect when that's said in front of a judge, and there was fear that he actually might take that back when in court. So no one could be told, including the family members of the victims. But lo and behold, around about 3 p.m. this afternoon, he appeared in front of a judge and has pled guilty to all charges. And at this stage, we do not know why there has been a substantial change of heart. And it'll be interesting to see whether we ever find out.
Yeah, because I think we were all assuming that he was going to try and use a trial to sort of, stand up and give his try and air his manifesto, although I'd understand the plans had always been to stop him from doing that as much as possible. And then here comes this reversal. Yeah, it definitely caught everyone by surprise, I think.
I mean, I've heard some theories go around that maybe there has been a deal in the background. So this is a hypothetical situation. Maybe the accused was told, if you plead guilty, there is a possibility in 20 to 30 years you might get paroled. But if you plead not guilty, you might end up in a situation where they give you a sentence where you will be in prison for the entirety of your natural life, no parole whatsoever. And you probably need to think about whether you ever want to leave this place. But that's a complete hypothetical. No one at this stage has any idea as to what went on in the background. It might even be the case no deals have been made. Maybe he simply decided, I don't want to go through a trial, and decided to say, yep, I'm guilty of all charges. It'll be interesting to see, as I said, if we ever actually find out what really happened.
Yes, I mean, a lot has been suppressed. I understand some of the family members of some of the victims weren't actually too happy about this because everything was suppressed right up until the point, so they were also taken by surprise. But I don't know. I'm sure certainly everybody wants to know more, but whether or not they will is perhaps a bit up in the air.
So shall we talk about that virus thing?
Yeah, it's all the rage these days. All the kids are talking about. Actually, all the kids are ignoring it. It sounds, and so all of the old. I don't know. It seems like a lot of people are ignoring it, and a lot of people are taking it very seriously. So I guess on average, we're getting something right. But let's start with the silly, frivolous stuff to begin with, because QAnon has been loving this to some degree.
Which is mostly because QAnon hasn't had much to do recently after the demise of 8chan.
So there's been a fair bit of this is it. This is the start of the storm, the whole COVID-19 thing. It's all just a cover. Just get everybody indoors, make them all isolate in their homes, and then we can go out and arrest all the satanic, pedophile, child trafficking, swamp draining people, whatever they are. And for whatever reason, for whatever these things happen, the first person who sort of started seeing claims that they were being rounded up was Oprah Winfrey, strangely.
Yes, this is a kind of weird little story claiming that Winfrey's home in Boca Raton in Florida had been cordoned off with caution tape because authorities were excavating the property and digging up the tunnels.
The tunnels, yes. So
which apparently was all related to some kind of pedophile network?
Well, yes, I think everything seems to be these days with QAnon. I'm not quite sure. But we had, somebody on Facebook was posting photos of our villa with caution tape around it saying this is Oprah's house. Somebody on YouTube, a man calling himself Tank, I wonder if that's a Matrix reference. They do like their red pill things. Claimed to gave a live dispatch from some parking lot somewhere saying that he had received word that Hollywood pedophiles are being arrested and Oprah Winfrey's house was supposedly some sort of child trafficking nexus. I don't know. Someone else posted a video of police officers raiding a house that didn't look anything like the house that was in the photos with the caution tape, but claiming that this was footage of a raid on Oprah Winfrey's home. Eventually, the noise got to the point that Oprah Winfrey herself actually heard that these weird rumors were going on about her and took to Twitter to say, no, actually, here I'm not being arrested. Although,
of course, is proof positive that she has been and has been instructed by counsel to deny everything in the media because her prison ankle bracelet will explode, a la a plot line from Fortress. Or maybe even Fortress 2.
Ooh, well, let's not go that far. So there's been some other stuff. Apparently, at one point, the Surgeon General of the United States was giving a talk, giving a press conference, and as he walked off, he said what might have been, "Oh, donate blood, everybody, we need it," or might have. Did he actually say, "Don't eat blood, don't eat blood, don't eat it"?
Josh, you've done this the wrong way around. You should have said, walked off the stage and said, "Don't eat blood," and then go, or maybe just possibly, what he actually said was donate blood. But no, you led with what he actually said. Suggested what he might have said. Well, you should have led with what he might have said and then made the zing what he actually said.
Possibly for comedic value I should have, but I just didn't want to humour the QAnoners in any sort of way in this case.
You never want to... you never want to humiliate the QAnoners. Actually, you want to humiliate them all the time. You never want to humour them and drag them into our nexus.
No. So, yes, apparently some people were saying this was, look, there he is. He's giving his message to the blood-drinking satanic pedophiles. But he almost certainly wasn't. And then now this was a weird one. And I don't think this is a strand of QAnon that I actually hadn't been aware of, because I make a point of being aware of QAnon as little as I can get away with. But it started for me, I don't follow actress and comedian Kathy Griffin on Twitter, but people I follow do, obviously, because somebody retweeted one of hers. She apparently is in hospital at the moment, and it wasn't clear if she had been hospitalized due to COVID-19 type symptoms, or if she'd been there for other reasons, but because the ICU was sort of being overwhelmed with COVID-19 victims, she was in there with them. But at any rate, she had a tweet from the ICU ward of some hospital. And looking at her replies, a bunch of people were like putting up Wikipedia definitions of adrenochrome and talking about adrenochrome in a couple of places. And I'm like, what the hell are these people talking about? And I made the stupid mistake of actually trying to find out what they were talking about, and came to realize, which I did not know, that one of the tenets of some QAnon peoples is apparently that these elite blood-drinking, pedophile, child trafficking Hollywood elites, one of the things they love more than anything else is to take adrenochrome as a drug, which they extract from the adrenal glands of the children they traffic. And so apparently stories are going around in QAnon land that these celebrities who have been catching COVID-19 have done so because some white-hatted patriot out there managed to taint a batch of their adrenochrome with COVID-19, and that's why celebrities are getting it. And that is presumably why QAnoners are going, oh, adrenochrome, shouldn't have drunk that adrenochrome, when a celebrity posts that they're COVID-19 positive online.
So that explains why Prince Charles has COVID-19. Interesting.
Adrenochrome, yes. And Idris Elba. Actually, the other one I saw was people saying, claiming that celebrities are being paid to say they're COVID-19 positive, presumably just to drum up awareness of it or something. And Idris Elba sort of said, don't be so bloody stupid.
Yes, that does seem like the kind of thing that if someone found out that you were faking it would end up being really, really bad.
So
also, I have to say, every time you say adrenochrome, I think Lisa needs braces, adrenochrome. Lisa needs braces, adrenochrome.
So I think that's enough for QAnon for now, but we still have a bunch of COVID stuff, don't we?
Well, yeah, so this is a story that we mentioned to patrons earlier on in the month, and we're now mentioning to you, our delightful non-patron listeners. Apparently, Donald Trump might have tried to buy exclusive rights for a COVID-19 vaccine being developed by Germans in the UK.
It's all a little bit... a little bit shaky. Do we, is this actually true? Is it something that somebody said and someone's taking out of context or so on? But the story that went around is Trump said to this German company, hey, can you make us a vaccine and only sell it to us and no one else? And some people said, well, maybe he did approach them, but didn't actually say only for us. He just said, can you make it for us? But then tried to cover that up because America's been doing a bit of a show at the moment, I understand, of, we won't be beholden to any foreign nations. We won't be supplicant to a foreign nation or anything
Imagine
like that.
if Iran developed the COVID-19 vaccine.
Yes.
Yeah.
What was the company's name? QofX. Some people have said, was this a funding stunt by QofX themselves? Is that where the conspiracy was? QofX himself have denied pretty much everything, but apparently they have had, over the last month or so, they had 3 CEOs in less than a week. Was this a sign of potential dodgy dealings causing people to get kicked out, or was it just a bit of uncertainty which resulted in stories like this going around because nobody quite knew what the hell was going on?
Or is it the case that the new CEO isn't aware of what the previous 2 CEOs have done and thus have honestly said there has been no approach because they literally have no idea what's been happening up until a week and a half ago? Now, I should point out, this isn't really a conspiracy per se.
Such.
It's a series of rumors going around about what might be happening. But this does tie in quite nicely to something which also isn't a conspiracy, but is being labeled as such, which is Trump buying the old snake oil from his son-in-law.
Yes, old Jared Kushner, apparently, not apparently, we know full well, has the ear of Donald Trump. And supposedly he's been telling Trump about these experimental COVID-19 cures that his Silicon Valley entrepreneur friends are into, which, from what I hear, not quite as bad as the you should drink bleach to cure COVID-19, but not a hell of a lot better either. But that could be the reason why Dr. Fauci, is it? I assume the C is a ch. I've only actually seen it written down.
Anyway, he's the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. He's Trump's literal right-hand man when it comes to COVID-19.
And yet we've sort of had the spectacle over the last week of Trump will sort of say something and then Dr. Fauci will immediately contradict him. And so it seems that he's sort of being pushed to the side a little bit. And Trump is more interested in listening to what young Jared says than what the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases says.
Yes, once again, this is not really a conspiracy theory per se. People buying into junk science or pseudoscience or snake oil medical cures happens all the time, usually due to people not having any idea of how medicine works or being very optimistic about experimental claims that haven't been adequately tested. But it has been labeled as Trump feels he can ignore Dr. Fauci after hearing Jared Kushner's conspiracy theories about coronavirus report. And that might be linking back to the fact that Kushner is one of those people who was kind of downplaying COVID-19 as a threat, which might link into a conspiracy theory that maybe the media is over-egging that pot. Something which it turns out that a particular world leader, one Jair Bolsonaro, seems to be milking an awful lot. And now I'm going, I've just over-egged a pot, which someone is now milking. I've really mixed my metaphors up there.
No, that's how I like them. Yes, so the president, is he, of Brazil, prime minister, whatever whoever runs their country, president of Brazil.
Yeah, basically their supreme leader.
Kind of thinks COVID-19 is a trick. So he indeed is going full conspiracy theorist. He thinks it's, just a concoction of the media, and that when people are protesting his government for handling the crisis badly, he thinks that's just an attempt by them to bring down his administration, and the whole thing's been made up because they're out to get him.
Yeah, and he might think that because certain world powers, when I say certain world powers, I mean a certain world power, appears to be spreading a lot of disinformation and misinformation about old COVID-19. Now, Joshua, without looking at the notes, can you guess which world power I might be talking about?
Well, you say disinformation, and we all know disinformation comes from a Russian word, so could it possibly be Russia?
So I was really hoping to go, so disinformation comes from the Russian disinformatia, so I am assuming the UK? But no, you went straight to the source. It is, in fact, Russia.
No,
so,
I'm
yes,
playing it straight today, straight across the line, until I feel like
this
not.
quarantine thing has really made you a lot more serious, and I don't like it. So, yes, according to the EU Diplomatic Service, it turns out that they have claimed that Russia is spreading a lot of disinformation about COVID-19, which, as I put here in the notes, given they've said outright Russia is spreading disinformation, either the EU Diplomatic Service is not being very diplomatic, or it's a lot worse, and that's the politest way they can introduce this issue.
Yes, so yeah, I mean, there's been a bunch of stuff. What do we have here? Russian sources drew a parallel between the 19th century opium wars and coronavirus, implying that it's all a plot for the West to exert control over China. COVID-19, it'll benefit pharmaceutical companies. Well, obviously, I guess that's true, but then trying to make that sound sinister. And a raft of the sorts of biological weapon claims that have been going around, blaming the West, I think, more so than China in this particular instance of disinformation.
Yeah, so basically claiming that the part of the world which is panicking the most about COVID-19, which is Europe and the US, are probably the people who engineered the bioweapon in the first place. Or at least that's what some sources of Russia Today have told me. And I'm now saying I don't think this is true, but it is worth thinking about, which ties into our discussion about Russian disinformation ops about this from a month ago. So basically, this just keeps on rumbling along, and Russia's going to do what Russia does best,
and of course,
being
actually,
Russia.
We didn't have it here, but another thing, or rather not something coming out of Russia, but something not coming out of Russia, has been sort of much talk of COVID-19 infection. If you believe the word from Russia, like they've had one death there or something, which people are being very suspicious of. But I did see, I saw a thing today of someone saying how it's all obviously a Chinese plot because, isn't it weird that it's sort of under control in these, well, first of all, it's weird that it was in Wuhan, but it didn't get to Shanghai or Beijing, which I'm pretty sure is a total lie. And then, it's all over Europe, but how come there have been no deaths reported in North Korea or Russia? To which the answer I thought was because North Korea and Russia are lying about how many cases they have. But I don't know.
You sound very suspicious, Joshua. Have you thought about seeing a conspiracy theorist?
I don't know. Maybe I should. But actually, I think that's all we have to say about COVID-19, but it's not all we have to say about Russia.
No. So this has
been a running gag almost over the last sort of month's worth of Patron Bonus updates.
Yeah, so earlier in the month, we reported on the fact that there's that report about Russian interference in the UK that was meant to be released before the general election in the UK at the end of last year, and was all signed off and ready to go, but the Johnson government wouldn't let it be released, which led people to go, why are we having a general election when there might be an unsettled issue about Russian interference in our electoral system? And this then has led to a push, particularly by Labour MPs, but also some dissatisfied Tory MPs, to finally get this report out, because it's been clear this hasn't been released. And so there's been a whole bunch of leaks about this, including testimony by campaigner and financier Bill Browder, who claim that Moscow's basically been infiltrating UK high society using paid intermediaries for quite some time to ensure that Putin's critics are attacked, ensure that Russian propaganda is spread at all levels, and to help facilitate and conceal large numbers of money laundering operations. Now, of course, this was then followed up the next week on the Patron Bonus episode by the Tory government actually finally admitting that Russia does interfere in the UK and its electoral system, despite the fact they haven't released the report. Josh, why did the UK admit that Russia's been interfering in their system?
They kind of had to, from the sounds of things, because although this report hasn't been and still hasn't been released, as far as I'm aware, they used to keep hearing leaks from people who have looked at the report, and especially Labour MPs who've also seen this have been leaking information. So Labour revealed that Russia hacked the NHS to leak how the UK government might sell the NHS out to get a trade deal with the US. And so sort of having said that, the Tory government has switched from, I think, denying things completely to saying, oh, yeah, it's happened, but still won't release it officially. So is it going to be a case, we wondered, of this keeps up for a little while, and then either they say, oh, well, there's no point releasing the report because everybody knows about it now, or to release the report and say, oh, what's the big deal? It's stuff everybody already knew about.
Yes, it does seem they want to basically make this issue go away by making it death by 1,000 cuts.
So I think COVID-19 in Russia were the biggest standouts of the last few weeks of Conspiracy News. But we've had a few other interesting little bits and pieces. Actually, we're still in Russia, I suppose. Vladimir Putin, when he's not spreading disinformation or talking about COVID-19, he was asked recently about whether or not he ever uses body doubles to take his place in risky situations or so on, which is sort of, there have been real stories and conspiracy theory type rumors around all sorts of world leaders and public figures. I mean, Saddam Hussein was notorious for using bodyguards, but then we've talked about numerous stories about Melania Trump apparently using doubles, various other celebrities using them, and some people have said the same about Putin, and he's basically addressed these claims head on. What did he say?
I have never used, using my best Arnold Schwarzenegger impression, which isn't a very good one. I have never, actually, apparently it's French.
That's what's sounding more French, yeah.
It's my Jean-Claude Van Damme impression. It's actually my doing a Q power.
I was going to say, yeah.
I have never used a body double, monsieur. The little grey cells, they are good enough without the body double.
Yes, so he did admit that it was something that had been brought up. People had suggested and talked about it. To
continue my Vladimir Putin impression, he said that during the Georgian crisis, he had thought very carefully about possibly using a body double because it would be much safer for him to do that in that particular time and way. But his little grey cells, they said, Poirot, you do not need a body double to solve the murder of the Mystery Grange. You will simply get your friend Captain Hastings to go down to the shop and buy a haddock, and everything will be fine.
I believe Vladimir Putin then gestured at the audience with a baguette and said, "Ho!" and then rode away on a bicycle trailing onions behind him. Anyway, so that was one little thing. Now we managed to get back to QAnon again with the latest developments in celebrity pedophile news.
Oh, God, we have to do celebrity pedophile news again.
I'm afraid we do. Okay, so the fatuous one, before we do the serious one, a weird one I noticed. Now, a person I do follow on Twitter is the actor and comedian Patton Oswalt. And a few weeks ago, I noticed he'd put out a tweet about something, whatever, and then people, QAnon types, were filling up his mentions with claims that with sort of TikTok pattern and photos of handcuffs, and also photos of a Q drop from almost no more than a year ago, where Q put tweets of Patton, put screenshots of Patton Oswalt's tweets, implying that he was next for the whole celebrity pedophile thing, and of course the tweets that they chose to publish, tweets of this professional comedian, were of course ones with him making weird statements in an obviously joking way, which they are choosing to not take as a joke. So he had one. There was one thing just sort of a random one he did. He was talking about people with weird feet for some reason, and people pushed back, and so then he put on Twitter, "The angry tweets from my Hammertoad followers opened my eyes. Pedophobe shaming hurts us all. I'm a proud pedophile," which obviously is a play on words and a joke, but for some reason.
And also, now I think about it, a joke that doesn't really work in a Kiwi accent. Because basically, both those words, the one you didn't say and the one you did say, sound exactly the same.
Yes. He had a few other ones, and Oswald has in the past done various series of tweets that look bad taken out of context, but once if you see the joke or read the hashtag, then they do make sense. So it seemed weird that they were piling on him as saying you're next, and B, that they were doing so on evidence that Q had first brought up over a year ago, but then I guess the whole stuff's going to happen any minute now, and then saying that for 3 years is actually kind of the MO.
Yeah, unfortunately. Shall we talk a little bit about a art Bible-y situation-y thing?
Just before we do, let's get this out of the way.
I was trying to avoid more pedophile news.
Well, I figured we have to mention it. The Corey Feldman issue. Corey Feldman has said a week or so ago he was releasing this documentary where he would finally be naming names about people who abused both him and Corey Haim when they were young. Said that one of those names was going to be a household name who you'd all heard of. Put on a slightly weird event where the video didn't work and they suggested they were being hacked, but more likely it was just technical issues. And eventually it came out that the big name who he was accusing of sexually assaulting Corey Haim was Charlie Sheen, which actually isn't a new claim that had been made, but there you go. So that is of more substance than random QAnon people, but depressing all the same.
Yeah. Anyway, this is more of an update to a Patron bonus episode. A Patron bonus episode that people have now had a chance to listen to. Because, of course, as we know, that a lot of people, including ourselves, are now self-isolating, and thus people need forms of entertainment to keep them occupied. Like many a podcast, we've gone back through our archives and taken the Patron bonus episodes that normally go with the news episodes, where we do novel content for our patrons, and made those free for people to listen to. And last month, we had a very interesting discussion about one Dr. Dirk Obnick, who may well have been a very, very naughty man when it came to selling near-mint copies of the Gospels to dodgy Americans.
Yes, so Dr. Dirk Obnick is a papyrologist.
Try saying that 3 times fast.
Papyrologist.
Fine. You don't have speech disfluency.
That's true.
You can say
just
that 3
throwing
times.
it in your face there. No, so it's his job. He worked for Oxford, wasn't it? Oxford University. And his job was basically to decipher tiny scraps of papyrus. In particular, there was one trove unearthed some years ago. People found an old, basically a dump, essentially, or an ancient Egyptian dump, that had millions, I think, of scraps of papyrus in it. And so he conducts the painstaking job of taking these fragments, trying to read what's on them, trying to decipher, understand what's on it once it's been read, trying to see if they can match them together, and so on and so forth. And there was a bit of a scandal when it appeared that someone, and he appeared to be the only person who's had the know-how and the knowledge to do so, had been selling some of these scraps of biblical-era papyrus to people around the world, including the owners of Hobby Lobby, the American chain store organization who'd gotten in trouble in the past for dealing in dodgy ancient antiques out of Iraq.
Well, no, Josh, you forget. Not only did they get in trouble for dealing in dodgy antiques from Iraq, they got in trouble because they were also inadvertently funding terrorism.
Yes. The people who they were paying for these illicitly obtained antiques essentially were giving the money to ISIS. So Hobby Lobby was pretty much funding ISIS. Now,
Hobby Lobby were buying all these bits of papyrus for the sheer fact that they've opened up a museum of the Bible. And that's where our new story comes in, because it turns out that among the things they bought to put on display were not just a lunar Bible, a Bible which has been to the moon and back, but 16 fragments of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And it turns out they're all fake. The 16 fragments of Dead Sea Scrolls, and also the Lunar Bible.
So, yeah. Actually, if you haven't listened to our recently declassified Patron episode about this, I think it was quite a good one. It was one of the more interesting little stories we've come across. And the story and the bit of sort of high-stakes international mystery detective work of finding out what had happened to these things, and the murky world of papyrus laundering, I suppose, that involves ancient mummy masks.
And cartilage. No, actually, no, cartonnage.
Or cartonnage, if you fancy.
Not cartilage, although I imagine there probably was some cartilage being broken by those Indiana Jones-style fisticuffs. I managed to save it.
You did. Yeah, interesting little follow-up. So I don't believe any of the... I think the problem with these particular papyrus fragments that had gone missing, about 120 of them, was not that they were fake. They were very much genuine, but were not supposed to have been removed from the collection they were in.
Well, these 16 fragments of the Dead Sea Scrolls
16 fragments
were modern-day forgeries made apparently from bits of Roman sandals, literal Roman sandals from Rome, not the Roman sandals you might buy to take to school, and had all been written in the same hand. And what's interesting is that even though they were all faked by the same person, they were all sourced from different dealers. So it actually seems like there's actually a quite elaborate conspiracy in the background to generate this product and then sell it to unscrupulous people like the owners of the Museum of the Bible, using different dealers to try and hide their provenance.
And there you go. And that, I believe, is all the news we had to talk about this month. But our patrons can stick around for our bonus episode. We'll be returning once again to the world of art and art academia.
Now, we did release the previous Patron bonus episodes to everyone last week to make sure our patrons have at least some degree of exclusivity. We won't unlock this week's Patron bonus episode for about a week or so. And actually, this is probably a good time to talk about, Josh, why haven't you joined our Discord channel? Oh,
because it's a bloody... Do you know how many times I've been on a website or something and they're like, talk about this more, join our Discord channel. I don't want to join your bloody Discord channel. I have enough apps and social medias and crap like that in my life, and I don't, to be perfectly honest, really know what Discord is, and I don't care to.
Josh, we have a Discord channel now for the Podcaster's Guide to the Conspiracy. Discord is it was developed for gamers, which means I have this horrible feeling it's a Gamergate conspiracy of some particular kind. But it's like IRC, Josh. Do you remember IRC? Internet Relay Chat.
I remember hating IRC and never using it, yes.
Well, then you can hate and use our Discord channel. So Discord is basically an online discussion group which also has some voice technology, so you actually can host chat. So I am thinking that maybe we might even live stream an episode as it's being recorded on Discord. But Josh, that requires that you join Discord. Well, if other people want to know how to get access to our Discord channel, if you become a patron of the Podcaster's Guide to the Conspiracy via Patreon, you are automatically enrolled in our Discord channel and can engage in the exciting chats we are planning to have online. We'll be talking about upcoming episodes, taking episode requests from our patrons, and maybe, just maybe, answering questions live on the podcast as they're posed to us by our Discord users.
Right. You did actually put the link to it on Twitter last week, didn't you?
Not for the Discord, no. That went out via a special email.
Oh, was that an email that I saw it? Okay, well, that's all right then. Then it is properly exclusive. So, yes, I suppose I have no excuse to not get on the Discord. And maybe you should too. And if you want to, you'll have to be a patron. If you want to be a patron, you can go to patreon.com and search for the Podcaster's Guide to the Conspiracy, or you can go to conspiracism.podbean.com and use Podbean's native patronage system. And that's all we have to say to you. So our patrons, we are shortly to receive an episode about the Salvator Mundi, the lost and then refound work of Leonardo da Vinci that's been in the news a little bit lately. Well, there's a bit of that. There's a bit of everything, actually. So I think we'll go off and record that. To all of you who are sensibly and safely isolating yourselves in the bid to slow the spread of COVID-19, good for you. Hope it all goes well. But as I say, for the time being, we're fine, so don't worry about us. And we will all talk to you next week.
We will indeed, at the beginning of what is essentially week 2 of New Zealand's great experimentation in self-isolation.
Goodbye.
Toodly pip.
You've been listening to the Podcaster's Guide to the Conspiracy, starring Josh Addison and Dr. M.R.X. Denton, which is written, researched, recorded, and produced by Josh and M. You can support the podcast by becoming a patron via its Podbean or Patreon campaigns. And if you need to get in contact with either Josh or M, you can email them at podcastconspiracy@gmail.com or check their Twitter accounts, monkeyfluids and conspiracism. And remember, it's just a step to the left.